Shinji and Warhammer40k, Chapter 15. Red vs. Blue, Part 1. Ritsuko Akagi groaned out and rubbed her forehead. She still had the remnants of a hangover. She, Misato and Maya had all ended up in the same bed, being too far into alcohol poisoning to get back to their respective apartments. And according to drunk logic, it would have been improper for them to sleep in the children's room. The pilots spent the celebratory night in a sleepover with their friends. "Does Shinji have an insanity that warps reality around him?" she repeated. Then she groaned again. "Insanely enough, that's the only theory that makes any sense so far." Asuka hunched over and shook her fist. "Damn that baka Shinji!" Ritsuko hunched over and shook her fist. "Damn that mini Gendo!" It was a true, if rather crazily hypocritical, bonding moment. "Well, everything's back to normal, or what passes for it around here. Shinji just can't hold on to a sync ratio, and while your own has dropped, at least it's higher than before we started with that whole mess." Asuka nodded several times, satisfied. "That's good." "Unfortunately, it seems Rei has the exact same sync standard as you. I can't really explain it myself." "What?" Shinji. Okay, she could tolerate his nonsensical skill. But to have that girl match her, it wasn't a blow to her ego. It was indescribably irritating. At exactly the same time, Rei smirked a little. It was simple. Although it seemed that the other girl's presence was tolerated, there was nothing preventing her from attempting to learn more about humour. Love that which he loves, shun that which he shuns. All in between was fair game. "Ayanami?" asked Shinji. "Something wrong?" She shook her head. "No, we are here." They stood before an elevator, the only entrance into Terminal Dogma. The big intimidating bulkheads were easily handled. "Monitoring up until now has been bypassed by Sister Ibuki, but this elevator has an internal check to how many times it's used." "I see." Maya unfolded her laptop. "Well, it won't show who was using it. At least it will say if anyone's recently gone down on it." "Only Commander Ikari and Dr. Akagi have reason to go into the deep well of nerve. I have clearance as well, but I do not come here until it is time for me to fulfill my purposes." Shinji winced. Down below she had died. Was her corpse still there? He gulped as the wire door opened. He'd rather fight off an entire army of angels than have to see that. Hell, given a choice, they'd be dust in the wind. Doing this, would it alert Father? Perhaps. Rei tilted her head to the side. It will also be a slow, long descent. We have a better method. Maya paused from running her hand over the wall panels, thinking on how to bypass the circuits. She was more on software, not the technical. Shigeru could have done it, but of course this was supposed to be secret. "We do?" Rei pointed down. "We've all," she continued. "Eh?" Shinji nodded. "I see. Not only would it be faster, we wouldn't trigger a hard switch." Maya folded her laptop and put it back into her backpack. She hit herself lightly on the forehead. "Silly me! I forgot! We can both use Rei's AT field without alerting the Magi system. We just need to believe. We can do this!" "It is unprecedented," she said with a nod, "but useful." Shinji put his arm around her waist. She did not blush, but Maya did when it was her turn to do so around the two. "Shall we?" he said as they all supported each other. They nodded to each other, took a single step forward, and plummeted down an open hatch on the elevator floor. Perhaps, thought Rei, I shouldn't have worn a skirt. She began to glow faintly, and focused with her AT field to break the rushing wind. Very slowly they started to slow down, and her skirt fluttered back down to cover her panties. Maya and Shinji acted like they hadn't noticed. If she wasn't embarrassed about it, then neither would they be. They slowed and stopped. There were twisting hallways and many mysterious places, but they had no time to explore. With everyone still in the euphoria of victory, it was their best time to take advantage of relaxed attention. Gendo would arrive the next day. Eventually they slowed and landed. Rei's glow faded. The lights were dim and red. "Does it need to be so spooky?" squeaked Maya. "This is a tomb," Rei replied. Shinji merely frowned. He could feel something. Every shadow seemed to scream at him to leave. He followed as Rei led them through the maze of dark, similar corridors. They gave no mind to whatever they passed, for anything more than their present purpose would only eat into their limited time. Eventually they reached the clone tanks. Someone was already there. "Greetings, you who are me," said Rei. Rei nodded. "Excuse us for making you wait, myself." She tilted her head a bit. "Are you prepared? You know my price, you who are me. Are you prepared to pay it? You will become one with him. No more can I give." Shinji and Maya both gaped at Rei, completely identical to the one standing in front of the memory transfer machine. School uniform, faintly amused expression and all.
There are two of you?"
Maya gasped out. "Technically, there are 24 of me," answered the one rating, as she raved to the tanks behind her. Shinji looked, then looked away, for after all, they were all naked there.
"How is that possible?"
Maya asked further.
"I thought your soul could only occupy one shell."
Slowly, Shinji turned his head back. He stared at the Rei with them, the Rei they had repped with and laughed with over the past weeks. "Lilith," he said flatly. That Rei opened her arms and bowed. "To maintain the integrity of this shell, a portion of the Great Mother's soul was required." "I have never really known you," said the other. "The soul is here, but the memories have been planted into my mind. We have never met until school several weeks ago. We continue to be nothing more than classmates." She looked somewhat fearful as well. "I hold the soul, but hers is the flesh that chose to die for you. Which one of us is the real Rei Ayanami?" Shinji flinched and looked away. He cared for Rei deeply, but even while he knew she was almost an angel and had her own AT field, not until at that moment had it really struck him how she wasn't truly human. He was just deluding himself.
"Rei, how... you brought yourself back to life?"
Maya had to know. "I am Lilith's soul given expression, but with the memories of Ayanami," she replied. She held her open palm out. "What is this flesh to the Great Mother? She is an angel as well, and her soul is vast indeed. To regenerate the identity was simple. Gendo had thrown me into a pit, and thought no more of this shell as he activated another." The other Rei raised her hand. "Me," she said. "It is necessary that there be two." Maya grit her teeth.
"Why?"
"One to be Ayanami. One to hold the fragment of soul and the memories of Ikari. We needed the practice. She thought it would not be right to give up my life without first knowing how to live." The third walked over to Shinji, who was standing there and looking down. He grew completely still at sensing her approach. She looked saddened slightly. "Shinji-kun, I enjoyed those days. I enjoyed being so human. And now I return this to you." She opened her palm under his vision. "Long time no see, little boss." Shinji reached out and hugged her. "Don't go," he whispered. "You are both real to me. Rei Ayanami will always be Rei Ayanami to me." She smiled slightly and closed her arms around his shoulder. "I must. This soul must return to that worthy shell who gave it up. I must return to the tanks and fulfill my final duty. To be one with you is my greatest joy." Maya looked to the other Rei.
"So that was why you were always there whenever I needed you,"
she said softly.
"Why can't he just get a Rei-chan and I get a Rei-chan?"
"Intriguing, Sister Ibuki. I would like to accept, but splitting my soul further only adds to the awareness of Lilith." She shook her head sadly. "For now the Great Mother sleeps. My soul is still here, just that the other has more of it. I feel the rest with her essence." Maya went over and hugged her as well.
"You're too good for this sinful earth, you know that? This will be the second time you'll die for us."
"I will still be here."
"But a piece of you that loves as you will be gone. It's just too sad."
Rei smiled. She rubbed her face into Maya's shoulder. "For it written, the only thing greater than hope is love. Hope may fade, but love is only strengthened by trials. For souls that knew each other so well, any more words were unnecessary. They just basked in each other's presence, savouring those precious moments. They could feel her sorrow and regret, and a promise that soon they would no longer need to hold secrets away from each other. She suffered in the selfish knowing that Yu Ikari was a brilliant geneticist and a key member of Gehern. It was highly unlikely that she wouldn't have known about the Rei program and the trapping of Lilith's soul. Those DNA sequences. She might have contributed and coded in, all voluntarily. So, she'd always been intended as a sacrifice for him. Shinji came from a family of schemers. Rei saw Gendo in a dispassionate light, as that of a mad beast about to be hunted down and shot. Yu Ikari, for many reasons, was the only person she could ever really dislike. Shinji pulled away from Rei. He took a deep breath. Such complete trust. He felt as if he was undeserving of it, and would always try to be worthy of her faith. He smiled a little. "Why do you look so sad?" she asked. "It is not yet time for me to go." He cheered up quickly. "It's not?" She shook her head slowly. "First you must undress and go into the memory transfer machine." She pointed to it. He recalled. "Gah!" And all the Reis just grinned. Once again a dark place to be. The members of SEELE met, after having a thoroughly unsatisfying meeting with Ikari. Both pretended to be working for humanity's salvation. Both pretended they each desired to prevent another impact.
"The very best thing you can do for a Messiah is to kill him,"
said Lorenz Keel. His visor somehow managed to convey a disapproving glare.
"This is the last time I will ask you to cease your operations in Tokyo 3.
He told the hawk-nosed man from France.
"Haven't you had enough of being humiliated?"
asked the SEAL representative from continental England.
"Ikari has all the advantages in his home ground."
The French representative snorted.
Have you seen that utterly self-serving movie? Ikari is creating for the world a false messiah. Slowly, bit by bit, he is taking away all the means we have to control him. Strike while the iron is hot, it is said. For if we allow any more of this soon, we will have no means to shape instrumentality.
"That, we still have the JSSDF. We have proof of his intentions to initiate third impact," replied the burly Novaya Soviet SEAL. "Ikari is many things, but a demagogue he isn't," mused the one from the Greater Americas Union. "This is a particularly devastating counterattack from him. There are two kinds of cultural pollution. The first being that of cultures difficult to overcome, such as the old civilizations of Eurasia, and the second being cultures easy to adopt, such as what we used to have. We have a big stick, but a multitude of smaller sticks have that much many more uses."
"Ikari's son is boy. What soldiers would die for a boy?"
asked the English SEAL.
"They would die more gladly for a young queen than an old king, but no one takes a young king seriously."
"Cultural power accomplishes more over time than mere military power. Of course we are at the twilight of this method, but populism still has its place. I don't know what he's planning, but direct methods can only help him now. He is, by his work, the good guy, and anyone that hinders Nerve now is the bad guy. Justifiable wars are always the ones best fought."
"We need no further proof that Ikari intends to betray us,"
the SEAL of Remnant UK spoke again. "Ah, but has there ever been any doubt that he would?"
The strength of the JSSDF is slowly being added to Nerve. Jet alone has several new and interesting prototypes. We may not sabotage the UN forces, since their newfound strength may be useful when we would need to force the hand, continued the SEAL from France. Damn that Ikari, Damn his son! This is too well executed to be mere coincidence. We should have taken a better look at how he had prepared the pilots for this task.
Laughter. Seal turned and looked down at Kaworu standing there. The angel hybrid had a thin smirk on his face. He had patiently waited as the old man all but forgot his presence. He had eaten of the fruit of life. Patience was his nature. Haste and ambition were for the Lilim race.
What do you find so amusing?
Asked Kill. I wonder, have you considered if maybe Shinji Ikari might have done this all on his own? The animosity between father and son was very clear to everyone in Tokyo 3.
Too clear. It is obviously a front,
The English seal said.
A boy do this. Even if he was a true messiah instead of a manufactured one, it is impossible to accomplish all that in such a time frame.
He snorted slightly.
You still have much to learn about humanity.
This brings up an interesting point, added the American seal. Will it be possible to turn the younger Ikari against the elder? What sort of control or incentives can we apply upon him? Kaworu seemed to think about that question for a few seconds, then laughed again. He reached into his left pocket and brought out a small, strange maroon mechanical figurine. He held it up to them. Commander Farsight thinks you might be setting your sights too far. Don't you, Shasashova? He dropped his voice an octave and wiggled it as he spoke.
Learn to shot in your reach. If your foe can come close enough to negate your striking power, all stratagem is lost. And when all stratagem is lost, the battle is over.
Kill Lorenz sighed slightly. It was bad enough to have an unpredictable angel as their agent, but they just had to have one that was truly deranged. Though he was made of the same techniques that produced Ayanami, they couldn't control him as easily, since after all, he did know how to use his AT field to the fullest extent. No one had any idea where he got that toy.
What do you mean, shorten our reach? Is there something more immediate that we are missing?
He replied.
Each must find their own way to serve the greater good,
Continued Kaworu in his weird voice, though still smiling faintly.
The bargain has been struck between our people. Allow us to retrieve Adam, and we will leave your kind to wallow in your own misery. Sometimes the best thing to do for the greater good is to do nothing at all.
The Soviet representative crossed his arms and harumphed. Tell your siblings that we will manufacture some reason for Ikari to leave. Adam is definitely in Tokyo 3. We have freed you from Lilith's prison and will kill Lilith for you. Her powers is ours by right. The rest is all up to you. You have our gratitude for that, at least. Kaworu replied in his normal voice. He was smiling openly. He had nothing but contempt for these examples of the Lilim. Though this world was once ours, there are many other worlds. Now, we are made for nothing but vengeance. Months had passed without an angel attack. It was as if the enemies, in light of their consistent and gruesome defeats, were reconsidering their methods. The prophecies about them were written by those who had no true idea of what the future would really be like. At best, they could see it through the weave of imperfect understanding. The pilots had adjusted to the mundane. It was a comfortable sameness from the day to day. Time had made them more approachable, more normal, as if the attacks were no more than a bad dream. Tokyo 3 rebuilt, lived and thrived, putting aside those sad memories.
It's the new year!
Shouted Kensuke as an emphatic finish to his impassioned speech about how everything had changed, and had changed, in less than half a year. As expected, he was ignored by most of the class. He didn't care. Comparing himself to the uncertain boy he once was, it could drive him to tears.
And a new beginning!
He jumped up on his chair and pointed out the window, his white jacket flapping. What more could the future bring?
Yeah, throw away your old selves and live in the now,
added Toji, going further and leaping onto the teacher's desk. Isn't it a great time to be alive? And to be sure, his life had never been better. His sister was finally out of the hospital. She couldn't play with other kids yet, but there was hope for her to get better. He wasn't ashamed of being linked to Hikari. He was 14 and he had a girlfriend. How cool was that?
Suzuhara,
growled Hikari.
show some respect.
She threw his own book bag at him, nailing him in the face. He toppled behind the desk. She then whirled around.
Ada, do you want a gunban?
Fast as a blink, Kensuke was sitting on his chair, hands folded attentively on his desk like a model of the perfect student. Everyone in the class began clapping. My, everyone's so energetic, one of the girls said.
Inquisitor Hiraki's in fine form today. I guess she wants to start the new year right,
replied another, giggling.
By the way, if she's here, then where are the pilots?
They haven't arrived yet, muttered one of the boys. He was looking out the window. It's New Year?
Oh, it's gonna be bad.
Eh? How can you say that?
He pointed out.
Look.
Outside in the schoolyard, it seemed as if the entryway was partitioned into three. There were three distinct streams of students entering through either the middle or the sides. They pulled into groups, each marked with having a clothing accessory in a certain colour to show their allegiance. They gathered, ready to begin the year's first battle in their ongoing war. It wasn't violent yet, but they each had newsletters and debates. They gathered into forms of the classical kind and occasionally skirmished with each other's ideals. And insults. And mad ravings. And prankings. Oh, Kensuke was insanely popular now, if simply because he had absolutely no restraint when it comes to the creative application of explosives. By that token, Suzuhara was the pillar of reason. He still couldn't quite get over that. Being the only one who could survive with and calm down Inquisitor Hiraki's wrath at such a smoking, colourful aftermath made him almost superhuman to the eyes of his peers. They were being forced into roles and they didn't put up much resistance. It was the only way to keep sanity around the place. Blue versus red versus brown. It wasn't just on the ideal woman, but also as they reflected the inner character post-impact citizens aspired to. Rei personified for them calmness and poetic grace. Asuka of courage and worldly nonconformity. Maya of reason and unpretentious responsibility. Those of Shinji Ikari's class watched and laughed weakly. At least it's not the Church of Rei, Asuka, or Maya, said one of them. Someone was thrown out of the huddled masses below for his heresy. The 4-point star was not a valid option, damn it.
I pity Hikari,
added one of the boys. Despite his words that she was indeed human to her, Shinji couldn't help but act slightly more distant towards Rei. The revelation still disturbed him. She didn't seem to mind as she found new Reis to occupy her attention, specifically irritating the hell out of Asuka. In retrospect, he admitted to himself perhaps that was why he avoided Rei. Being that Asuka was around him almost constantly, going over to Rei almost always provoked something that had him in the crossfire. It also continued to feed the fan clubs. The pilots only gave tacit acknowledgement to the existence of the clubs. They didn't do anything to stop it, for the groups all actually acted as another screen protecting their privacy. Strangely enough, Asuka was the most approachable of the pilots. Despite her rather scathing nature, she responded to the existence of her fans. The way she acted so aggressively against Hikari meant that others might actually still have a chance. The Red Club, however, had hope in even more combative interactions between her and Ayanami. I am not a doll, said Rei, in response to the jibe at how some people liked her just because she was so perfect and predictable. Obviously, those people also needed to get a life as well. Asuka turned, slowly. Though her face was still completely placid, the pilot of Unit 0 had a certain subtle, yet monolithic determination. The red-haired girl began to smirk a little and leaned one-handed on her desk.
So what are you?
I am, at the very least, an action figure. Asuka's hand slipped and she nearly fell. She stumbled about trying to recover her balance, then put her hands to her lips.
What the hell?
She blinked. She began to leer victoriously, tilting closer.
A toy for the boys, eh?
Rei nodded. One specific boy. Asuka gaped openly. A low "Ooh" spread throughout the classroom. Ayanami-san was escalating the engagement so quickly, it was an overwhelming first strike.
Well,
Asuka stammered away, pointing out with a shaky finger.
aren't you just shameless?
Return fire, damn it! Open all launch tubes! Rei just nodded again, in that irritatingly calm manner. I have no fear to show to Pilot Akari. As always, the exact literal truth. I have no doubts how we connect. But the connotations, to turn a pun, were a bitch. Shinji lay with his head on the table, face turned the other way. He was almost crying. He didn't know if it was Lilith's influence or not, but sometimes he felt as if Rei hated him somehow. She enjoyed seeing him suffer. Avoiding Rei only made her feel lonely and seek him out, which of course only led to a vicious cycle. If he spent too much time with Ayanami, then it was Asuka who homed into his location like some sort of parity-guided missile of indignation. Asuka made some sort of incoherent enraged sound. Rei very slightly smiled. Victory.
Baka Shinji! Pervert Shinji!
Asuka grabbed him by the back of his collar and began to shake him.
What have you been doing? Do you think I'm just gonna let you get away with that?
He flopped about uselessly. He could hear distant laughter. Again, all through the class. Lucky bastard.
Poor bastard, said Toji. A tsundere and a yandere at the same time. It'd be more merciful to feed him to the sharks.
Kensuke nodded. He clapped his hands twice, made a machine spirit have pity on his tormented soul. Asuka was still steaming when they were summoned back to Nerve. An angel in a good fight, that was just what she needed. She was understandably upset at being told she wouldn't take the lead, even though yet again Commander Akari was off the base. Oh really now, people were beginning to think. The old guy was so useless.
Him? Why him again?
She shouted out, pointing at Shinji. This is a simple retrieval mission. Being that the conditions would force the Ava to be sluggish anyway, a consistently high sink ratio is not needed. Besides, worst comes to worst, Pilot Akari can try pulling even more unforeseen weirdness with the AT field if he has to. Ritsuko looked up, her eyeglasses glinting. Are you saying you want to swim in lava? The mission is simple. It really makes little difference either way. Asuka put her hand down. Upon further thought, no, she didn't want to swim in lava. She could not, colloquially, pull freaky shit with the AT field if she really had to. She just wasn't strange enough for that. Ritsuko pointed to the main screen, showing a still image of the angel.
It looks like a fetus,
said Asuka. The scientist nodded and gave her an approving little smile. If Shinji had Misato and Rei had Maya, then she was the red-haired girl's ally in the command center. There was very little choice. They both counted on each other's rationality, and she had never really known Kyoko Zeppelin Suryu. It's in something like chrysalis before metamorphing into an adult. This is the first time we detected an angel long before it becomes active. This is an extremely fortunate opportunity. If the global satellite survey hadn't just happened to be scanning this particular volcano for scientific purposes, we might have missed it. We're going to try and capture it? Shinji asked. Misato nodded. It should still be really weak. We need this. It could really help a lot to have a live specimen. She looked to Ritsuko. Of course, if it turns out to be hostile, we still get to destroy it, right? Destruction of the angels is supposed to be Nerve's purpose. Yes. You're perfectly authorized to try and destroy it if capture becomes impossible. But I don't know how you possibly expect him to do that while... She shrugged. While swimming in lava. We'll figure it out when we get there.
That's not the sort of thing you should say to inspire confidence!
Asuka exclaimed. Shinji and Misato, they were both just too easygoing in their efforts. It seemed like an insult to all those who had to work hard to reach their own positions. The two hid their pains all too well. Well, the combat update to Unit 0 is complete. It's incompatible with the Type D equipment, so Rei will just have to stay here in case Tokyo 3 is attacked, continued Ritsuko. The pilot nodded.
Understood.
Type D anti-heat, anti-pressure and anti-nuclear special suits are for Evangelions operating in extreme environments. Unfortunately, we only have one, the scientist shrugged. It was originally designed for Unit 2, but over the months we were able to make it compatible with Unit 1. How soon do we mobilize, Masato-san? This is what's known as an A-17 response situation, so as soon as possible, Masato said, back in her operations mood. Pilots, get to your plug suits. She paused. Yes, you too, Rei, even if you're just on standby. Gendo had actually already noticed. Months had, after all, passed with little else of world-shattering importance. By her very nature was one such event. Rei, rumours have been spreading in school, and apparently all were instigated by you. He asked dangerously. Have you had intimate contact with piloted Carrie? No, sir. Then why are you saying it as if so? Rei blinked, her equivalent of a shrug. It is Pilot Soyu who misunderstands. I have also told her we may connect in a similar manner, and she began to scream. I still fail to understand this concept of humour. Humour? It's a subjective idea. Understood. However, it seems I enjoy upsetting Pilot Soyu. Would this be sufficient as humour? Why? I do not know, Commander. Perhaps she has red hair. I dislike red. It wasn't even a proper red, more like orange, not yellowy gold enough for Daka neither. And under his linked fingers, Gendo smirked. Asuka's overreactions were clear enough to see. This torment was to him not just understandable, but permissible. He nodded slightly. Very well, you may proceed. Thank you, Commander. Let it not be said that he was ever selfish in his bastardiness. It was perhaps one of his few truly filial acts towards Rei Ayanami. Asuka began laughing at seeing the prepared Unit 1. Oh my God! She gasped. It's so ugly! It looked like an old steel diving suit, somewhat. It reminded most of a Marshmallow Man. Perfect form should be an expression of perfect function, Pilot Soyu. That's the ideal of perfect beauty. The aesthetics pale beside the need to withstand enormous heat and pressure, in this instance. Asuka whirled around, clutching her heart. Make some noise when you walk, damn it! She frowned, narrowing her eyes. Why are you here? Are you following me around? It is a coincidence, replied Rei. Yes. Until Evangelion's Unit 1 and Unit 2 leave Nerve, I am still at reserve status. Simply, Pilot Soyu. I have nothing better to do. Well, can't you do something other than contradict everything I say? Rei tilted her head to the side, her lips twitching slightly. Yes. Asuka turned away and gripped the guardrails tightly. She couldn't really hate Rei in the same way she did Shinji. She could at most grant the other girl a very deep dislike. The other female pilot was still quite inferior to her mind, as Rei had yet to do anything other than support the other Avers. She was very much the tool, and Asuka saw herself as not being anyone's tool. Her actions built her own glory. The other pilot wasn't willing to challenge that notion, and annoyed Asuka was a very easily distracted Asuka. She might be irritated at Shinji, but as long as she was in such a mood, only saw him as an undeserving loser. She wouldn't be inclined to dig deeper into the source of his skills and confidence. If she was willing to compete with her for his attentions, so be it. It was something even all his intellect couldn't save him from. Quite likely, Rei surmised to herself. She was saving the other girl's life. Poking around where she wasn't wanted would likely get her killed. None of the players in the great game could afford any mercy. Asuka, when thoroughly disgusted, would then seek out Kaji and interfere in his work, again, very likely saving his life, though it would likewise irritate the hell out of him too. Of course, Rei was just so disciplined and predictable, she couldn't be doing it out of any malice or forethought. Asuka just had no emotional control that way, didn't she? Such simple words shouldn't be getting under her skin like that. Rei smiled, though hidden from everyone's view. It was a smile that could be called naughty, if not downright bad. In the end, it was just fun to see Soyu squirm. Even the red-haired girl knew that, and had no justifiable reasons to counterattack in any matter. Besides, Rei thought further, I just stomps her. It's no good to pick on the weak. Asuka was proud of having already graduated from a university, however, so she should be resistant to mind games. Shinji walked out of the dressing room in his new plug suit. Doesn't really look any different from the normal plug suits, Ritsuko-sensei, he called out over his shoulder. How's this supposed to help me deal with high pressure? Ritsuko answered back from a high gantry. Push the second button, Shinji. The suit expanded quickly, in much the same way a life jacket is rapidly pressurized. It stretched according to predetermined tolerance points. What the whoop? Misato cackled beside Ritsuko. She leaned over and waved. Shinji normally was just too painfully thin. Ha! Thanks, Ritz-chan, you're right. Too bad it's not Maya's shift yet. But that's why humanity invented cameras. She brandished a small digicam. Click, click, click. Asuka was understandably unrestrained with her amusement. Shinji merely sniffed in noble affront and tried to look as composed as he could, even while waddling along in the round inflated suit. At best, he tried to imitate Churchill. In reality, it was closer to the Penguin. His suit creaked out, making sounds as he walked. Rei tilted her head to the side. She wasn't laughing. Is this in respect to Round Boy? She asked. He groaned. Not you too, Ayanami.
This is great, said Asuka. I'm really glad I'm not doing this. The honour of undertaking this mission is all yours, third child.
She saluted primly.
We shall all fondly remember your sacrifice.
Yay me, he responded. Mount Osama was a distance away from Tokyo 3, on the approach to Old Tokyo. It forced Nerve to again deploy with Ava carriers and truck-hauled capacitors. Another thing the expanded timeframe brought, though, was the expanded battery pack. It allowed the Avas to operate for 15 minutes at standard operations. Given how for every battle they had to make freaky use of the AT field, the estimated full use was, of course, 5 minutes. Unit 2 had this pack, while Unit 1 needed a consistent power supply delivered via the umbilical cables. Asuka looked up at 3 glints in the sky.
What's that?
The UN Air Force is on alert above us for the duration of this operation, Ritsuko answered.
Will they be of any use this time? Those are too high to be their crappy VTOLs.
No, Asuka. They're not for the Angel. They're for us, if we fail. The faux blonde looked into a small window on her PC and at Asuka's frown inside the plug. Orders are that should the Evangelion fail to contain this Angel, they'll bomb it together with us.
That's terrible,
gasped Maya beside her.
Who could order such a thing?
Ritsuko didn't seem to mind a flying threat. Who else? Commander Akari.
Asshole!
Huffed Asuka. That shouldn't be a problem, Shinji put in. He was more nervous about dangling on the crane, though it was only a few dozen meters above the slope so far. Asuka could just shield you with her AT field. That might count as interference against orders, though, Misato said. If she stops the N2 bomb, that means saving the Angel. It could get her court-martialed. I don't think they do that, Misato-san. Which one? Bomb us or put Asuka on trial? Both. The UN and the JSSDF aren't our enemies. Like us, they want to save humanity too. If I fell down there, what do they lose? One Ava can't be recovered since the crane is gone. You, Ritsuko-sensei and Ibuki-san, important people to Nerve. Asuka, if taken away, will just leave Rei to stop all the rest of whatever angels may come. It's just silly. Not even if Father orders them to. There's no guarantee he'll stop the Angel, and one that we have a better shot at when it eventually surfaces to assault Nerve anyway. That's why men pilot those things. People who can make their own decisions. I trust them to do what's right. Asuka hissed.
Well, aren't you just Mr. Happy Pants?
Shinji was popular with the military for obvious reasons. To them, she was that super psycho girl. Laser operation complete, the crane operator reported. The seeking laser lens then slid forward as the Evangelion moved to place over the smouldering Goldera. Core secured, said Makoto. Unit 1 position, set and ready.
Type D equipment functioning, no problem,
added Maya.
Shinji, are you ready?
Yes, Misato-san.
Operation, go!
And then the Evangelion began to descend. Shinji closed his eyes and tried to keep his center. He felt giddy, to boldly go where no man has gone before. Who else could say they've literally waded into the very bowels of a volcano? Nerve and technology and the hopes of man. It impressed him so much. Unit 1 has broken the lava surface. Type D equipment, still no problems. As the lava covered him, he put his trust into the machinery of man. A third impact would make all his daring useless, risking death for the sake of knowledge, death for the continued dream of never-ending exploration. It was all worth it to him. Shinji? Yes, status report. Present depth is 150. Speed of descent is 20. View sight is 0. I'm switching to the CT monitor now, Masato-san. Click. Even with this, the range of sight is only 120 meters.
What's it look like, Shinji?
Asuka asked eagerly. Well, it looks just like how you'd expect a sea of lava to look. It's all red. But instead of ripples and shadows coming from the surface, here there are dark bands just swirling around everywhere. He grinned. It's magnificent. It's really something else. Nature's really awesome. Asuka slumped back, starting to regret not insisting she have the glory of being the first person to dive into a pool of magma and survive.
Depth 400, 450, 500, 550.
And so on. Maya took a deep breath and continued.
900, 950, 1000, 1020, over the safety depth.
It's okay, she told herself. Believe. Shinji kept his eyes closed and forced his heartbeat to slow, even as all around him creaked and groaned.
Depth 1300. Predicted target point.
He opened his eyes. Nothing detected. No one here.
Lava flows faster than expected,
Ritsuko noted. Makoto adjusted his monitor. Target motion speed is different from the prediction.
Then hurry up and make a recalculation. Continue the operation. Descend farther.
Makoto looked up at Masato, who stood there implaceable. She stared at the screen without emotion. He mustered up his courage and continued to remotely trigger the crane loader. Shinji didn't even flinch as he heard a loud snap. Second circulation pipe cracked, he heard someone say. Maya said,
Depth 1480. Over the limit depth.
She meant it as a question, though the inflection was as a statement. Masato shook her head.
We haven't encountered the target. Continue.
Her expression softened slightly.
Shinji, how about the status?
The Evangelion can withstand it. We've a job to do.
That we do, Shinji. Just hang in there.
The Evangelion continued to descend. Maya winced at
limit depth plus 120.
As another loud crack was heard inside the nerve command truck. Every Unit 1 just lost its prog knife, Makoto said.
Limit depth plus 200.
He looked up. Katsuragi-san, no more. This time the device is manned. And it's Shinji in there. Don't you live with him? Can you just keep on risking him? Can you live with losing him? Masato answered curtly.
I'm responsible for this operation. Continue.
It's not a problem, Shinji said to them in the same flat tone. I can go farther than this. We must do more. Masato and Shinji. Asuka bit her lip. On the surface, they were such relaxed, very unreliable people.
How can they both be so cold-blooded at times like this?
It simply frightened her to know she was staying with those who could live so easily with the idea of murder. Maya let out a relieved sigh.
Depth 1780. This is the predicted target position by the recalculation. Limit depth plus 440.
There! I see it! Shinji reported. Ritsuko leaned closer to the screen. The multi-band view of an exterior camera showed the angel still curled up in its shell.
Since you and the target are both driven by the magma flow, there's only one chance for successful contact.
Shinji made no reply. He focused on the black ovoid and tried to have his Ava reduce speed to match. He deployed the electromagnetic cage. Target! Flickering panes of energy snapped into place. Captured! Crowed Makoto.
Whew! Good job, Shinji-kun,
said Masato.
Now let's get you out of there.
Asuka picked at her teeth, bored. She felt she could have done better. Then again, it was so simple a task any idiot could do it. However, she was very relieved as well. Slowly, the Ava started to ascend. Now the tension's gone. Ritsuko smiled and looked aside. Admit it, you were also worried about today's operation. I was. But if we failed, there would be another one. So we had no choice. We had to make that gamble. Misato tried to smile as well, but the fear hadn't yet left her heart completely. It was a forced effort more similar to a grimace. She knew one day Shinji would just die. She'd already grown too attached. It would all but kill her as well. A third impact. Ritsuko looked away. Misato, as always, was too honest. Her idealism was untarnished. Yes, we don't want that. An alarm rang. Both women looked up sharply. What? Both said. There's something wrong! Shinji shouted. The capture device began to shake under his grasp. This thing, it's... Gah! A loud whomp cut off communication. A shallow bump rose up on the lava surface. Shinji! Shinji! Misato screamed into the link. Misato! What happened? Asuka demanded to know. A trap, said Ritsuko. It was all a trap. We took the bait so completely. Something awoke. It knew the taste of that soul. Unidirectional AT field. Easiest, most efficient to make, Shinji said, pained over the comm. The explosion just ran around it and slammed me into my own barrier. I'm alright, Misato-san. Shinji, extermination of the angel is now our priority. Misato looked to Makoto. Get him out of there! Hurry! Yes, Katsuragi-san. Cranes in full reverse. Damn it, Shinji! How could you be so careless as to lose your weapon? What's that, Misato? Yes, I'm dropping mine now. Asuka held her own prog knife over the rim and let it fall. 30 seconds until prog knife arrives, Maya put in. This angel, where... Holy crap! Shinji shouted. There was a massive dark shape right there, right below his feet. It was approaching fast. Releasing ballast! The Ava lurched up, but the rate of increase wasn't enough. Asuka! What? Be ready to protect Misato-san and the others. Shinji? Misato asked, voicing all their confusion. What are you planning to do? I'm not sure if my AT feel... Boom! Ah! A huge, flat, black shape slammed into the Ava, only barely held off by its field barrier. It swam past, banked in mid-swoop, and tried to snap at the cumbersome war machine from behind. And thus, Shinji began to pull weird shit with his AT field. Or rather, push. To get himself moving quick enough, he pushed himself with a local field barrier. Up and away from those rows of sharp teeth in a segmented mouth. A flailing fin struck the Ava and sent it spinning. A goddamn trap, said Misato, looking through the Ava's remote view. It was too easy, said Ritsuko. The angels took 15 years since second impact to attack. All that we've faced so far are mature combat forms. Why should we really expect to find an immature form at this point in time? She bit her lower lip. Such ferocity. She didn't know if Asuka could have managed to hold off against that. The angels were adapting. They were the force of evolution. Were they also getting smarter? Shinji flared the light of his soul, imitating Gagil's use of its AT field, to reach the dropped prog knife. Pincers just weren't as able to grip the weapon as well as hands could. He ended up gluing it to the manipulators with his AT field. Of course, to split his concentration meant he could only wait as Sandalphon attacked again. He dodged like a matador and stabbed into the beast. Sparks flew as the vibrating blade rubbed against unyielding material. His prog knife ended up being torn right out of the Ava's Type D digits. That's not skin, he shouted out. That's armour! I'm going to need something with a much bigger punch than a prog knife. Asuka, you're the only one who can destroy this. Just get it up here and watch me! Hurry! Screamed Misato. Hurry! It's at the limit. The crane can't reverse any faster. Makoto shot back, panicking. Sandalphon was larger than Gagil, and its two long limb-like fins were aligned with long, sharp spines. It was fast. Incredibly so. It was malicious. He could feel its need to destroy him utterly.
Crunch!
Shinji barely deflected another swipe. He kicked out against the teeth of an open, ava-white jaw to put some distance between him and the angel. Predictably, he swung back on the cable. The angel swam aside as the crane laser began firing into the lava. The power of its blast was minuscule compared to the heat and pressure already there. Then, instead of seeking to directly kill the Ava and its pilot, recognisable by the light of his soul, it went at the cables instead. The suited Unit 1 was already attempting to climb faster by pulling itself up the coolant links. Shinji sent forth another wall of force. The angel used its AT field mainly for propulsion and was pushed back. It so easily just swam around for another pass. In response to his abuse of his field, it spat out 2 black ovoids at him from its 2 ice stalk-like tendrils. Immature angels. Or more like aborted angels, with only one purpose: to die in as explosive a manner as possible. "Ah!" he groaned out. He shielded himself from the blast with an omnidirectional AT field barrier. Yet Sandalphon was already arching up above him. His spines grazed the cables and snapped all but one, and that too began to fray. The angel descended to beyond his sight range again. Shinji reached for the unravelling ceramic-infused line to life. The last link snapped. "This," Shinji said numbly, as his hand just barely missed it, "is such a stupid way to die." He began to sink. The jaws reached him.